Welcome to the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie Betts. After learning a ton about kidney stones and helping people prevent stones at the University of Chicago, I was fed up with all the terrible advice people were finding online. So I decided to do something about it. The Kidney Dietitian was born. This podcast is for people who want to learn what actually works to prevent kidney stones and still enjoy life, eating, and their favorite foods. Let's dive in. Well, welcome back to the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. This is your host, Melanie Betts. I am a registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, and I am so excited to have a guest on today, Barbara, who took Kidney Stone Nutrition School, my online course, like 6 months ago. When did you take it?
It was actually almost a year ago.
A year ago. Oh my gosh. Again, time flies. We were chatting before we started and we're just saying, I can't believe it's the end of summer. I can't believe, just time flies. But thank you, Barbara, so much for being on the podcast today.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I just wanted to start out with just talking a little bit about yourself. I'm sure people want to hear, where do you live? What do you do? Just tell us about the life of Barbara.
I live in Walnut Creek, California. And I am a teacher here. I've lived in Walnut Creek a good portion of my life. I was born in Central California on the Central Valley, but we moved here when I was pretty young and grew up in the town. I did go away for college and when I first was married, but when we started having kids, I have 3 kids. We moved back to Walnut Creek, and it's been a really great place to raise kids, and I've always liked, I work in the Walnut Creek School District, so I've always liked teaching in the same district as my kids. And having that community feel.
Yeah. Where exactly is Walnut Creek for people who don't know? California is a large state.
Yes, true. It's a town just east of San Francisco. Okay. And so we're considered a Bay Area town, the East Bay.
Nice. And what grade do you teach?
I teach 8th grade history.
Oh, 8th grade.
Yeah, I have a credential to be able to teach English as well. So I've done different combinations of either all in middle school, but different combinations of English and history and social studies.
How cool. I always think that, it takes a very special person to be a teacher at all, but I think especially a very special person to teach 8th graders, like middle school age. I think that is probably the section of my life that I would least want to go back to personally.
I always, I know that they aren't their perfect selves at this place. I think my intent was not, it wasn't my goal in life to teach middle school, but circumstances, led me to take a job in middle school, and I actually really like it quite a bit. So, if you like it, you like it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. You can see glimmers of the people that they're going to be. A lot of them are really talented already in music and art and sports, and they can be really articulate. They can be pills too.
Yeah, well, anyone can be, though, to be fair, even adults.
Right.
So, thank you so much for what you do. And you mentioned that you live outside of San Francisco, and you may or may not know that I love wine quite a bit. So do you get to go to Sonoma, Napa at all, since that's very close to you?
Yes, it is close. It's beautiful up there.
Yeah.
Some friends of ours have a fish market up there that we go up and get fish from them. Sometimes it's different times of year. Napa is so beautiful in the springtime with the mustard flowers and the green, and then in the fall we don't get changing colors the same way you do on the East Coast, but Napa has some of that change, and it's really beautiful in the fall too.
Yeah. So fun. California is such an amazing state. I would love to spend more time there, but it's very far from Chicago, turns out.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes.
Yeah, we are lucky though, because I can go to the beach, and then the mountains within.
Best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. Yes. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourself. So let's transition to kidney stones. So kind of what was your history with stones? What, has this been something that you've dealt with your whole life, or is this relatively recent? Kind of what's gone on with your kidney stone world?
I had zero experience with kidney stones before. It was something I knew happened to other people sometimes. And my mom actually had some troubles with some kidney stones as she was older, not when I was growing up, but as she's been older. And so I guess I had a certain awareness of certain things just because of her and friends, but never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would end up being somebody that was also dealing with that. So when I had the kidney stone attack, I guess, I don't know if that's what you call it.
Yeah, sure.
It was really out of the blue. I didn't know what it was at all. Now I suppose if every little twinge I feel on my side, I suppose I'm like, oh my God,
panic a little bit. Yeah.
But it was really new to me.
Okay. And when did you have that kidney stone attack?
It was, again, almost a little more than a year ago.
Okay.
And I first thought when I woke up in the morning that day, I woke up quite early, like around 4-ish, 3 or 4-ish or something like that. And I didn't feel right. But I didn't perceive it at that point as side pain yet. I kind of felt some symptoms that I thought were maybe a UTI. And, but I have never had one of those either. So I wasn't 100%
like, what's going on? Yeah.
Right. I just knew something wasn't quite right. So I called the advice nurse for, my insurance company. And she went through a lot of questions, and I can tell in retrospect, she was actually kind of trying to screen whether I was having a kidney stone issue. She kept on asking about, pain on my side or flank pain or something. And at that point, I didn't have that yet. So she said, you probably have a UTI, we can get you in later, when everything opens up, but, I can get some antibiotics going for you. And I don't know all that, just with that direction. But pretty quickly, so I got off the phone with her, and very quickly it proceeded into that agonizing pain that everybody who has stones knows, which was pretty crazy. So I woke my husband up, and he took me in to the hospital. So again, never having had that. I don't know if it had been any different, now having had that history, maybe they, when you're in the ER, they might go straight to doing that. I think they have to rule everything else out anyway, just in case.
Yeah. And it sounds like for you weren't having that pain, like you said. So they were like, well, probably not a stone, because stones hurt. So probably not a stone. Right.
That was the first direction I think they went.
Yeah.
But ultimately, by the time they did all the scans and checked for different kinds of infections and things like that, I had 2 stones. And one was on its way down, and the other one was in my kidney. It was the bigger one that was coming down and causing the pain.
Yeah.
So, that was really a surprise.
Yeah. So then you went to the ER. You passed that one stone that was coming down. What happened to the other one?
It's still there.
Oh, it's still okay. So the second stone is still in your kidney. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So I had one on each side. And the first one, they gave me, some pain meds. And they also gave me, some Flomax, which I think is one way now, help treat it to help things come out a little more easily. And then it was just, they just said, now you have to just wait and you just check your pee to make sure it's out, right?
Yeah.
So I actually think I was pretty lucky in the whole process, because I was hearing then from different people, and even from the doctors at the hospital, that it could take a long time. It could take weeks. But I think it was only like a day and a half or 2 days.
I mean, that's long enough, right? I mean, it's obviously better than weeks, but we don't want even a day and a half.
Right. And it was my experience in the ER. That was the first place I started hearing the wacky information that you talk about quite a bit.
That's my next question.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The contradictory things they said. And you don't know, since I've never had to deal with it, but on one hand, some of it just sounded like this can't be what, people get kidney stones all the time. This can't be what you have to do for kidney stones.
Do you remember what some of it was?
One of them said, you'll never be able to drink anything carbonated ever again, like carbonated water, Coke, I guess he was thinking, or diets, or any kind of sodas, but he also said, this is a nurse that I had, said seltzer water, I wouldn't be able to drink. And I drink seltzer water.
Me too.
And I thought, wow, I had never heard that one before.
Yeah. And also, that is the last thing you need to hear when you are in the ER with a kidney stone. Like, you're like, man, my life sucks. And then they're like, well, you can never have all these things that you love. Like, that's not helpful for anyone.
Right. And two nurses did that. He did that. And then another one talked about you can't do that anymore. Which that didn't seem the time and place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also they didn't really give me a unified message.
Right.
And really you're just there to get diagnosed and out, and then your doctors are going to deal with everything else.
Yeah.
So actually I think they were just being conversational maybe, but at the same time, it wasn't very helpful.
Not helpful. So I'm assuming you went to see a urologist after this and have continued to see a urologist, correct?
Yes. Though in this day and age, and kind of the way my, insurance or my medical I actually haven't seen anybody in person. We've done a lot of talking over, because I haven't really had any complications, luckily, since then. Absolutely. So initially my primary care doctor talked to me. But in the meantime, it was within a few days that we talked. I talked with her, and then she referred me on to a urologist. But in that short period of time, that's when I found you.
Okay. How did you find me? Just wondering.
Scrolling
Google.
Dr. Google.
Yeah.
I'd like to be proactive if I can. And I kind of want to know what's happening to me and what might happen later. Yeah. And I'm pretty good at filtering out, because there's a lot of weird stuff online too, or you can see that people have agendas, or
sell you something.
Yeah. Right. You definitely have to look at the source. You have to kind of make sure everything's legit. So I'm pretty good at filtering that kind of thing out.
That's so important. I mean, for health information in general, but I feel like, and I'm obviously biased here, but I find that especially for kidney stones, the amount of misinformation that's out there is astonishing. There's actually been studies that have found that the information on YouTube, I think specifically, was not accurate, like 90%. Don't quote me on that, but some very large percentage is just not accurate. And I wonder if it's because, people with stones are oftentimes so desperate to never have that pain again for obvious reasons. And I wonder if it's almost just like a way to truly prey on people that are desperate and need help, you're going to do anything to not have that pain again. And so I wonder if that sort of feeds into this world that we find on Google of all of this terrible information. I don't know. I'm just I don't know either.
And I do think it's interesting that doctors don't know more, and the resources that they have are can be misleading too. Because everything, what I learned from, your site, and a few other sites, there's a few other things out there that you have that same kind of balance that, but I learned it primarily from you, that it seems to just make sense that if you have different kinds of stones, there's different ways that you might have made those stones, and how individual, your nutrition is important, but that's so individualized in your body. Yeah. I suppose I also had the benefit. My sister is a chemist. She is a chemistry professor. She also lives in California. Not close to me. She lives in Southern California, but so she was on this as well, looking some stuff up, and so all the chemistry of how, things might bond together to create a stone and because of imbalances, that's right up her alley.
She was all about that.
Yes. So, so that was, more confirmation, I think, and it made sense.
Yeah.
When I first, my primary care doctor, because in the time that I had found you and you had, I could read that the 24-hour urine test was so important to find out why you personally did it. So I knew about that before I talked to my primary care. And so I asked her about it. And she didn't know. She goes, "Why?" She said, "Why would you need to know that?" And because she'd already been told, I had my stone and I'd sent it in to have the analysis for it. And, with the 24-hour thing, I said, well, you have to know why you made that stone. And that's what it's going to tell me. Now, I think at that point, some people, I've heard some stories from people in the kidney school and online on in your forums, that people still get pushback at that point. But I luckily, the primary, she just said, well, you can talk about that with urologist. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. One gate through, right?
Yeah, which is fair because certainly the urologist is the one that's supposed to be ordering that test. So I'll give your primary a pass since that's not her area.
And I thought so too. Though I do feel like a primary care person, and I like my doctor quite a bit, but I do think a primary care doctor, since they're your first line, they should at least know what
the basics of prevention.
Yes, that's what I thought. But anyway, so again, I kind of feel the same way. I can give her a pass a bit. So then when the urologist called, and it was one of the physician assistants that called, he, in all our conversation, it was pretty, at that point, I think my stone hadn't come back yet. He goes, we'll talk again when we find out what kind it is, because then we can talk about diet. So at least at that point, he did not tell me to do anything until we knew what kind of stone it was, which I give him credit for that. But he never mentioned the 24-hour test. So I brought it up because I learned that from you. Yes. And I brought it up and said, I'd like to have one of these. And he said, he goes, well, we usually don't recommend that until you have a second stone.
And you had a second stone.
Yeah, I guess a second episode, is what he meant. I don't know what he meant. I said, well, I really would like to work on this and prevent things from happening. And I think it's my best way to know on what to do. And he went, okay. So the good thing is, I have my experience is that I just then had to not even push that. I had definitely had to ask. I would not have gotten it if I had not asked. Mm-hmm. But at least I didn't get pushback. Yes. And I know other people have that.
Yeah. I do think in my experience with, talking to all these people online is generally people do not get it just unless they ask for it. And most of the time when they ask, the doctor will order it. I've had, but that being said, I feel like maybe 20% of the time people will say like, no, my doctor won't order it, which is just crazy to me.
I think so too.
The craziest response, like my blood pressure actually goes up when I think about this still. A guy went and asked his urologist for the test and the urologist said, oh no, we don't do that. Because if we do that, then we'd have to fix the numbers.
Oh gosh.
Well, yeah, you'd have to prevent stones. You'd have to know what you're doing. Like, oh my gosh, I can't. But yeah, it's crazy. Only about 20% of people with stones get a urine test ever. And really, we should be getting them annually. That's what's literally in like the official medical guidelines for kidney stone management from the American Urological Association. So I I don't know, I could probably do an entire separate podcast series about why that is. And I'm just going to be guessing, but it's definitely a problem. So for anyone out there listening, please ask your doctor for this test and work with someone who really knows what they're doing to interpret it. Because to be fair,
Right.
if your doctor doesn't know about this test and you're asking for it, chances are they're not going to know very much about what to do with the results. So,
Right.
yeah, so you need both. Getting the test is great, but then you need to work with someone who really knows what they're
Mhm.
doing to interpret the results.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that they don't have a kidney nutritionist on in part of their system as well. Somebody like you, it seems like somebody should be, on staff that you would get referred to.
Yep. I think around
Now, I didn't have
8% of urology clinics have a dietitian that they partner with in any capacity.
How many did you say?
About 8%.
Oh, golly. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there's just, I think in general, American healthcare isn't that much about prevention. So this was an example of that.
Yeah.
Though I am lucky that I didn't really have to push too hard, but it still is more reactive than proactive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once I got the results of that, because in the meantime, I'd reached out to you, I think, as well, in terms of the kidney school, or I can't quite remember, but I think I can sign up I think I was already getting your newsletter and then trying to decide if I wanted to do the kidney school or not.
Yeah.
And so somewhere in there, that's why I decided I was going to do that, because it was going to have a place that was all the information was consolidated. I could, and also the fact that once you sign up, I have access to go back and re-look at the different parts, which I did this summer. Again, being kind of a teacher, I had some time, and I wanted to just refresh my memory about, and refocus to make sure I was doing things that I should for myself. So I could go back into the videos of the school and look at the different parts that were important to me, which I really appreciated.
Yeah. And that's something that I really wanted to make sure was available to students, because I think healthcare and kidney stones are sort of seen as this one-time deal. Like, great, you had a stone, like, let's ship you off. But stones are unfortunately likely a symptom of something else going on. That's why people who have stones are so likely to have another stone. And so whatever changes we're making for nutrition or prevention for any, with anything, we need to make sure it's something that you're doing for the rest of your life, in theory, right? And so being able to revisit that information, looking at future 24-hour urine tests you might get, and like kind of constantly interacting with the course is something that was really important to me, because it's what you need to stay on track.
Right. It's been very helpful.
Yeah. Great. So can you, maybe if you can remember, think back to kind of if you had made diet changes before you started my course, were you focusing on sort of the wrong things, or kind of what was it like eating before you took the course? Like, were you just kind of explain what that experience was like?
I think what we came down to, well, before, I guess, before I knew that I had a kidney stone, and before, just the way I used to eat, I was avoiding calcium sometimes in dairy products, because I have I part of it for calories, because I'm somebody who's always had to watch my calories and my weight. But part of it is for being lactose intolerant, but not terribly so. That's the kind of intolerance that you might be able to have a little bit. Though it was just easier. And two of my kids are lactose intolerant, so we just didn't always have dairy around.
Not part of your life.
Right. So I didn't do that. And one of the ways that I probably try to manage hunger a bit would be making sure I had protein all the time in meals. And I was good with fruits and vegetables. I like those and have that a lot. So I could see, from my my urine test and the type of stone I had, I could see that actually I really needed the things I needed to switch were around maybe try not to go so protein heavy, and to try to work in some more calcium or dairy products. because
Yeah.
that's the most efficient. I do, would do plant-based milks, but I even didn't even do that much. I just was because, yeah.
Yeah.
But like if I got a latte or something, I would get plant-based, or sometimes if I was making oatmeal, I'd use plant-based milk or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I tended to do almond milk. That was my favorite one.
Mm-hmm. And we discovered that your urine oxalate was high, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so we knew that getting in that calcium would be so important to
Yes.
get that down. And maybe
Right.
those turmeric supplements were contributing, and the
Right.
almond milk, it sounds like. So
Right.
lots of things were perhaps contributing to stones for you.
Right. And I was lucky I had I brought it with me. I have it sitting right here, but I did, the thing that was going for me is that I had, was it citrine? Is that the good
citrate?
vegetable? Citrate.
Mm-hmm.
That's when that was good. So my fruits and vegetables were good.
Mm-hmm.
My particular test didn't measure protein, so we didn't have an actual number to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
But just knowing that that's something that would be better if I brought it down a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
it would be helpful.
Yeah.
So I had I did have a few changes that I could make.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so helpful to know what was going on for you. So often, you go online and you read like citrate, right? That's like the notorious, like everyone should be drinking lemon juice. Well, your citrate was fine. So that would do literally nothing for you to prevent stones, right? But we knew we had to really hone in on our strategies to get that urine oxalate down to prevent stones for you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't so much, and I also appreciated that actually, I think just, knowing how all the science was fitting together and the chemistry of it, I didn't feel so worried that, I felt like I could still eat spinach now and then.
Yes, all foods can fit. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's something I stopped taking those turmeric supplements.
Mm-hmm.
And now my lesson from that is also that you have to be really wary about any kind of supplement, that they're not really vetted the way for how they might react in your own body. Yeah. And I actually don't see around turmeric supplements do get put out there quite a bit when you're looking at arthritis-y things.
Mm-hmm. And lots of
so I have never seen once that they could cause, probably is not the right word, but in people they could cause.
Yeah. And susceptible people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I stopped those. I stopped buying almond milk because that's so high in the oxalates. And I used to buy almond butter a lot just because I liked it. Mm-hmm. But when I have a nut butter now, I just do peanut butter.
Yeah.
Plain butter.
Absolutely. It's delicious.
Yeah. And then really working on the dairy and just getting in the habit of making sure I have a little more of that. I think our goal when that you wrote up for me here was to try to get at least one more. I was probably having 2 a day, and you said if you get 3, 3
makes a big difference.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I really aim to do that. I don't make it every day. But it still is better, probably more than what I did before. And so what I do, I've just been a little more mindful about taking a lactate pill.
Okay. And that works for you.
Yeah. I think it's working for the most part. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a helpful change. And really a lot of dairy has some protein in it. So there is a fullness.
Definitely. And fat too. If you're eating like a cheese, obviously there's going to be some fat there, which can help you feel full as well. Right.
And I actually, so I was eating yogurt before, but I did have, sometimes I was doing non-fat, but I went to low fat for some of those. And that makes me feel full a little bit longer too.
Absolutely. It also helps your body absorb the vitamin D in there. So that's good as well.
Yeah. And I think there was just a study that came out that, again, not to be so afraid of full fat dairy.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Even though it is saturated fat for whatever reason, the fat in dairy seems to doesn't function in your body for whatever reason, the same as saturated fat from like a beef or fatty pork or something like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely. And it does help you feel full. I look for low fat, not fat-free yogurt as well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so that's a switch that I made too.
Yeah, nice. So if you could guess, and you did such a wonderful job of doing your research early on in your kidney stone journey, if you will. So it sounds like didn't have a whole lot of time where you were living in this sort of unknown and reading this stuff online about, basically everything is going to cause stones is what you probably would deduce if you tried to do this yourself. But can you try to guess what this might have been like if you hadn't come across my site? What do you think your life would look like now if you hadn't taken Kidney Stone Nutrition School?
Well, I probably would have jumped all over the lemon juice thing because that's out there.
Everywhere.
And actually like a friend of mine who has some kidney stones, she's like, put lemons in your water, put lemon this. And I thought, also knowing that just putting lemons in your water isn't enough of the lemon juice anyway, but that is something then she said, my doctor told me that. Like, okay.
It's so hard. You want to be like, your doctor doesn't know what they're talking about.
Right.
Not
and
like,
there are, oh, go ahead.
I feel bad saying that, but because there are certainly some urologists who do, but I think the problem is urologists are really good at getting rid of stones. That is what their training is in. They know how to get stones out of you and help you pass them. But when it comes to prevention, that's just not part of education. And so that's why you get this advice of just like, oh, just drink lemon juice and stop eating spinach.
Then there's lists that exist online, and I may have even gotten one from my doctor at some point that have things on there that, a lot of them are some vegetables that I don't need to avoid. That
aren't even high. Yep. Monoxide.
Right. That,
yep.
Yeah. That, and I think I would have seen some of those lists, and then but they don't always match up. There's this little list from somewhere and a little list from somewhere else.
Every single one is different. Yep.
And my mom, looking at my mom's experience which was a few years ago, where she received some recommendations from her doctor that were of that general nature. And she doesn't really know what kind of stones she had. I'm not sure if they told her or not. I can't quite tell. But her list that she got of foods, she felt quite frustrated because it seemed at odds with other kind of, she has some other health issues as somebody who's, more elderly. So she's like, she was throwing up her hands. I won't be able to eat anything if I follow all this recommendation. And I can see that in some of the people, in the forums that you have, where people have that frustration where
there's
they
nothing
feel
I
like,
can eat.
Right. I think they're in that space where they're getting lots of advice, but haven't really kind of either honed in on what works for them or done all the analysis that can really help.
Yeah. And what a terrible way to live, truly. Like food it's literally required to live. Right? You need to eat to live. And it's so much more than that. Like food is part of celebrations and life. Like we eat 3 times a day, most of us, or more, right? And to feel that sort of fear is heartbreaking. Like the fact that people are out there, so many people are out there with stones feeling afraid to eat anything is very, very sad to me, especially as someone who loves food, as a foodie. I think I'm a dietitian just because I love to eat. And that's one of the messages that I want everyone to get is that you can still enjoy food. You must still enjoy food and still prevent kidney stones.
And I think also what I've noticed, because I am somebody who likes to research things and understand what's happening. And I like nutrition things. But really, when you do pull back a bit and look at the big picture, some of these things that people are worried or contradictory aren't as contradictory as it feels like in the moment.
Yes.
Because we all should be moderate in certain things anyway. None
of us should be eating a ton of salt, or very, very few of us should be eating a ton of salt.
Right. Right. And we really don't need piles of protein all the time. The amount can be pretty small. And so, fruits and vegetables are just plain good.
They're just good for you.
Right.
It's not exciting
And
advice, but so true.
no, right. Uh, just knowing that, having spinach once in a while is going to be fine. Even almonds, like if it's I don't seek them out, but if it's on something or in something,
You're not going to
I
lose
know
your
I'm
mind.
going to be fine. Yeah, I know I'm going to be fine. Now, I guess the mystery was that had been my approach this year. And so I was when I went and had the scan to see what was happening a year later, it was going to be that mystery. I didn't know. Okay, is this working?
Scans are stressful.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it my moderation that I did? I changed a few habits, and I have been moderate about some other ones. Did it work? And so the good news was I have no new stones.
Yay!
And the stone that was left there that hadn't passed is the exact same size.
You cannot hope for anything more.
Right.
We just want that stone to stay there, not grow, not move a millimeter, and just be.
Right. So fingers crossed, whatever I'm doing seems to be working right now. And they have me, on the schedule to get a scan next year. So that was all good.
That's wonderful news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do feel like, there's a few places I probably could have tightened up a bit more if I had had some news that I had already started thinking about that. Like, okay, if I have another stone, what else could I do? I still could probably work on my salt a bit more. Salt's tricky. I don't add salt a lot to things, but also I do at the same time too. I cook at home. We don't have a lot of processed food, but it's just there.
It's just everywhere. But I love that you're sort of saying that you weren't perfect, air quotes here. You weren't perfect. But you still made pretty significant changes to what you were eating, but also they didn't seem overwhelming, right? Like you added some milk, you figured out a way to make that work for you. You maybe adjusted that oxalate a bit since you did have that high urine oxalate, and it worked. You didn't, you don't have more stones, right?
Right.
You did not form any more stone mass. And I love that message because, I'm all about enjoying life and going out to eat on occasion. You do not need to be perfect. You do not form a stone in one day. It's about these little habits that we have over time. And like you said, sort of stepping back and looking at the big picture is really what it's all about. Well, I think we are running out of time, Barbara, but I wanted to ask you if you could describe in one word how your life changed after Kidney Stone Nutrition School. What would it be if you had to? And you could use a few words if you need to. But.
Okay. I think empowered is a good word.
I love it.
Because I had resources that from an expert, and from you, and it covered all sorts of bases. There's all aspects of these different parts: your salt intake, your fluid intake, your protein, your calcium. I don't have the uric acid, things, but that, potentially that if you were that kind of stone. There were so many places that I could revisit and look at. And I knew I could reach out to you because through the kidney school, that gives
community.
And you've been great about responding even outside of that before. But in the kidney school, there's that place where I could reach out to you and you'd respond. So I knew that I had tools that I could rely on going forward and revisit and tweak a little bit if I needed to. And that felt good.
Yeah. That sort of lifetime support, really. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Barbara. That makes me so happy.
You.
My heart is smiling.
I appreciate all your work putting in there.
Thank you. I'm so glad you found me, and even more excited that scan came back with good news. Maybe we'll have to have you on again in a year to report back on the next scan.
Follow up. Fingers crossed.
Yes. Well, with that, I will close this episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. Thank you again, Barbara, for joining me. And with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you for listening to today's episode. For more help with kidney stones, check out my website, www.thekidneydietitian.org. For more personalized help from me, check out my online course, Kidney Stone Nutrition School. VIP enrollment includes help directly from me. I can't wait to see you there and help you prevent kidney stones. Have a great day.